Got it. Thank you. All right. So I'm Neil Alper, a member of the Continuing Education Committee. So welcome to the Lane Lyceum's opening program for the 2021-2022 year. Tonight, the Continuing Ed Committee is pleased to initiate the first of what we expect to be several Lane Lyceum series. The first series is entitled Beyond Ourselves, Exploring World Faiths. It will be, excuse me, it will examine 3 and perhaps 4 world religions, Druze, Baha'i, and Islam. It will take place on 3 Tuesdays through November and possibly into December. Tonight's Lyceum, the original Unitarians, Druze of the Middle East. It will be followed in 2 weeks by Baha'i Faith, presented by Ramin, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, and I apologize, Aber Shemaine, devoted follower of the faith. And 3 weeks later, it will be the Culture of Encounter, lessons from Prophet Muhammad's links to Christianity, presented by Craig Considine, a professor of sociology at Rice University, whose roots are here in Needham. So now I would like to introduce my friend and former colleague, Professor William Miles. Bill is a professor of political science at Northeastern University, where he also previously served as the Stotsky Professor in Jewish Historical and Cultural Studies. He's a 5-time Fulbright Award recipient and an author of a dozen solely authored books, including Jews of Nigeria and Afro-Judaic Odyssey, Political Islam in West Africa, State-Society Relations Transformed, and Scars of Partition, Post-Colonial Legacies in French and British Borderlands. Professor Miles teaches undergraduate courses, comparative politics, religion and politics, music and politics, and the politics of developing nations. At the graduate level, he teaches courses in international development. He's a former Peace Corps volunteer, is fluent in too many languages, French, Hausa, Bislama, and conversational in Creole and Hebrew. Public radio has broadcast a dozen of his commentaries. Also, and certainly relevant for tonight's talk, Bill spent 8 months living as the only Westerner in a Druze village in the Upper Galilee of Israel. So without further ado, here's Professor William Miles to discuss the original Unitarians, Druze of the Middle East. Bill, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Neil. And thanks for bringing me from Northeastern to Needham and beyond. And shout out to friends and family. And let me go ahead and share my screen right away. And ask if you can see. Now, I don't see my screen. Whoop.
Your PowerPoint is not showing it, Bill.
Right. Okay, let me try it again. Huh. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's not showing anymore.
Huh.
I'm going to have to put it back up. Sorry.
While he's doing this, just to let you know, he would like to give us a talk and have questions sort of at the end, and we'll recognize by seeing physically raised hands. Well,
okay, I'm loading it again. you know, part of the problem I know is that, as I'll be saying, as I'll be describing the religion, it has a very secretive nature to it. And by virtue of our gathering tonight to discuss it, it may actually be interfering with the doctrines. So this is so bizarre. It was working, as you know, and can attest just a second ago.
Huh.
So Neil, why don't you say a few words, or Amy, or tell me about the Lyceum?
Go ahead, Amy. You're welcome to do that while we're filling in.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Am I okay? The Lyceum started, many years ago. It was done Sunday mornings, and so we've had many speakers come in the mornings, but we had a very beloved member of our congregation who was very supportive of the Lyceums. He himself was a minister, Ed Lane, and so we decided that our name, our committee name is Continuing Ed, and we kind of always felt like that was a way of holding on to this very wonderful member of our congregation. Last year during COVID, we had a series on women in empowerment planned for a year ago, March, and we got the first speaker, Florence Graves, who I think is here tonight, and then COVID hit and we had to cancel the rest. So we switched over to online Zoom programming, and we had both church members, who shared, who shared their expertise, but then we've brought in so many other wonderful people. So we're good. Okay. Wonderful.
Okay, sorry for the glitch. And I want to say that this is an opportunity. This has been an opportunity for me to explore, for my own education and edification, the Unitarian Universalist movement, because I'm speaking to experts. And so you will know everything that I'll be saying in these next couple of slides. And as a reminder to me, the history of Unitarianism as we understand it, with its first use in Europe being in the 17th century. And correct me later if I'm wrong, it started out as a Unitarian movement to counter the Trinitarian concept within Christianity. In the US, I'm going very rapidly, don't worry. So in the US, right after the US, we had the first Universalist Church of America with, in 1825, the Unitarian Association. And you all know that UU merged between the more Christologically challenging Unitarian movement with the more humanist and globalist Universalist one. So if you take nothing away except for this, it's the claim that the original Unitarians do not come from Europe, they come from the Middle East, and they are Druze. With a doctrine that began 5 centuries before the notion of Unitarianism within Christianity began, that it was very fervent for 3.5 decades, when anybody who wanted to become Unitarian in Egypt could do so, but after that, it was too late. So you guys, if you better be happy with the UU version in Needham, because you cannot join this other kind of branch of Unitarianism in the Middle East, which migrated very early because of persecution from Egypt to the countries of Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine, as it was called at the time. And now a deliberate digression. This comes up in my classes, and it comes up in all discussions. The relationship between Protestant Christianity and UU. And to be more specific, is Unitarian Universalism a Christian denomination? So I'll just let that question hang for a moment as my digression ends with the UU, and say the reason why I ask the question now is because this doctrine of Middle Eastern Unitarianism emanated from Islam, from the Shiite branch of Islam, and within Shi'ism from a particular subsect called the Ismaili. And so the question that's going to arise in parallel between UU and Christianity is, are the people I'm talking about this evening, are they part of Islam or are they not? In the same way that Unitarianism evolved out of a particular understanding of Protestant Christianity, but I saw Tony shaking his head earlier when I asked if it is a Christian denomination, and that's why the question in parallel is quite appropriate. And if there's a question whether the Druze type of Unitarianism, if they are Muslim or not, the question also arises, and this is a real important question, are they Arabs or not? Okay, end of that digression. So fast forward a couple of centuries to modern times, when the independence of 3 countries in the Middle East captures demographically 90% plus of all Druze in the world. And so we're talking about Israel, as I said, Syria, and what became in 1948 Israel. You can see that in Jordan, there's a little territory as well. And that dot, can you see the dot on this map? This is a topographical map of the area we're talking about. It covers Israel, northern Israel. It covers Lebanon to the north, and it covers Syria in the right-hand quadrant. And that dot is where I've spent 7 months of life in a Druze village. And as you can see, well, I'll just tell you that it's very close to the border with Lebanon. When I move my cursor, is that visible? Yes, okay. So this is the border between, this green line between Lebanon and Israel. So, 2 terms for this Unitarian branch or style of religion in the Middle East, hikmah and taqiyya. So The first thing that anybody learns about the Druze religion is that you cannot learn it if you are not Druze, that it is a secret religion open only to the Druze people themselves. And according to the doctrine of Taqiyya, they are also supposed to hide it from the outsiders and the external communities because they've been persecuted throughout the years, and they're taught that it is better to practice in private than be abused, violated in public. So there's a lot that historically has been said about the unknowability about the Druze, and particularly the secretness of its faith and doctrines. And this quote from a Druze scholar repeats or crystallizes what many authors have said. One of the earliest books in English about the Druze, this one by Gabriel Ben-Dor, again, emphasizing the prohibition upon the Druze about talking about their faith, sharing it. So much so that when I was going, I got this email from a senior colleague of mine warning me because of historical incidents of nasty things happening to outsiders who tried to get too close to the Druze religion. So when I went to the village to live, I can assure you I did not go to study the religion. I had a completely different research agenda. But I learned certain things that they couldn't keep secret, one of which is that among the Druze themselves, there is a distinction between the group which is practicing, observant, religious, the so-called enlightened ones, and the so-called ignorant ones. And the difference is that only the enlightened ones are allowed access to the holy books of the Druze faith. And by virtue of that, only they are supposed to know and fully comprehend this esoteric Unitarian religion. The sacred book or collection of sacred books is known in English as the Epistles of Wisdom. And it's actually a collection of different writings that have been kept under wraps, literally as well as metaphorically throughout centuries. And I emphasize, kept under wraps, kept secret from even most Druze, the unenlightened ones. Now, the Ukal, the enlightened ones, look like this, if they're men, because they have certain dress codes, even grooming hair codes. In fact, Tony can almost pass for a Druze, except that the mustache is not quite the walrus style that before the elders who can grow these long white beards grow. You don't have to be bearded to be Ukal, but at this level you do. If you become one of the enlightened ones, alcohol, no way, no smoking, and no mixing of the sexes in any secular forum. These are all haram, meaning prohibited. And of course, it's not only a question of outward behavior or look, it's the inner change that taking the vow of enlightenment entails, and that is seeking the truth, saying the truth, being truthful to your faith, to your people, to your family, and being protective of the land where the Druze live, and being protective, if you're wearing the beards, of your women folk. And the women too dress, if they have taken the vow to be enlightened, they dress in black, except for their white shawls. And in distinction, and the Druze are very proud of this, to the status of women within Islam, Druze women have greater equality within their community. For example, they can go pray in the house of worship, that's the Helwe. They have access to the Holy Scriptures, which, remember, most Druze do not. Unlike Islam, polygamy is prohibited, only one wife per man, and vice versa. Druze women can take the initiative for divorce in ways that are much more difficult for Muslim women. And in terms of inheritance, much more equal, equitable distribution in case of inheritance from deceased parents, or even from divorce. Now, as you can see, the enlightened and the unenlightened, and I'm obviously one of the unenlightened ones, they do frequent each other. They can be very good friends. They can actually be family members. Just because your brother is an enlightened one doesn't mean that you have to be enlightened as well. And to emphasize again, most Druze do not take the vow to become enlightened. Most do so when they are adults, and when I say adults, middle-aged, after they've seen the world to the extent that they can, depending on where they're coming from. And so most children are not religious. And kids are kids. And what I always like to say in reference to all religions, not just the Druze, but it's particularly important, no religion is a country unto itself. The Catholics of Italy are different from the Catholics of the United States. Protestants are different in Latin America from North America. And Druze are different, and to the left you see the Syrian flag. To the right you may make out the Israeli flag because these are Syrian and Israeli young Druze. So, you know, I've kind of emphasized that it's secret and not even the Druze themselves know what's in their holy books, but what might be knowable? Are you ready to visit some sacred spaces in the village that I lived in? If you don't want to go there, you know, that's okay. But Neil says yes. So I'm taking you to the major shrine, Druze shrine in the village that I lived. This is an Arabic, the sign is in Arabic, Hebrew, and English for the rare outsiders who are neither Hebrew speakers or Arabic speakers. And I should say now that the native tongue, the mother tongue of the Druze is Arabic. This is the shelter that houses the shrine itself. This is the viewing area and the waiting area, the reception area, and the sheikh, the Druze holy man in the middle. You may have noticed that behind me, I put my copy, my painting of him up. It's not usually up, but for you guys, I thought I would have it as my background. So this is the front of the shrine, and the shrine is covering a cave. And in the cave would go and meditate Sabalan, the prophet Sabalan. So if you have removed your shoes, have you? Have you mentally removed your shoes? And if you're a woman, if you put on a headdress, then you can go down these stairs into the cave itself, where Sabalan meditated hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Be careful, don't slip on these rock stone steps. Now, I'm sure somebody's going to ask me what is inside the cave. Sorry, it's a secret. Can't let you in on it just yet. If you come back up the steps, you can see to the side one of the chelways, the houses of worship. And the Druze only gather on Thursday evenings. Not all the Druze, remember, only the minority of the enlightened ones. And what they do, what they say is a secret, even to the vast majority of the Druze who are not allowed in there. The Druze pride themselves in having a minimum of rituals. They think that Muslims do too much praying 5 times a day. They think Jews go overboard with all of their rules and regulations. They've got one big holiday a year, the Qurban, which actually they share with Islam. It remembers the near sacrifice by Abraham or Ibrahim, Abraham, of his son. And that's it. Everything else that the Druze do is secret and not very ritualistic. Here I'm standing, I'm joining some of the guys. The one in the middle, you can tell that he is an enlightened one. He's actually the guardian of the day of the shrine. And the others are his buddies. And yet there have been lots of books written about the Druze, ranging from American to Lebanese Druze to even the sex queen educator herself, Dr. Ruth Westheimer. She co-authored The Olive and the Tree. So why do I call them Unitarian when the word Druze is more used? Muahidin is the word for Unitarian or monotheist. And that is the word that they prefer to be known by. That's what they call themselves. It's the outside world which calls them Druze after one of the early adherents to the new faith, who was assassinated, sorry for the typo, so long ago. I better get off that page. And the essence of the Druze faith comes to this one word, tawhid, which means unity. Divine unity. oneness between humankind and the divine. And they pride themselves in being truly monotheistic, and I even say radically monotheistic, because they look around themselves and they say, hey, you Muslims who call yourselves monotheistic, but in the name of your God, Allah, you commit acts of terrorism. Well, not all of you, but some do. And you Jews who have your own Hebrew names for the one God, you use force to protect your land in a way that creates the potential for warfare between you and those other so-called monotheists, Muslims. If you were truly believers in the unity of the divine and the human, you would not be going to war with each other. So they take monotheism very seriously and elevate it to a universal level that they do not see being done by others in the Middle East or others in the world. They have this notion of a universal mind. It's very philosophical. Some call it Gnostic in the Greek sense, but that from the time of creation, God has been everywhere. And this notion of even creation is one that is very difficult for us non-Muhaidin to capture, because for them, time is not cyclical, is not linear, it is cyclical. That creation didn't happen and then everything follows. The world gets recreated from time to time, and that recreation comes with new people, new prophets who are bringing further understanding, deeper understanding of Tawhid, of unity. And through time, the Druze acknowledge certain messengers or prophets. And I know that you recognize 6 of them, regardless of where you come from faith-wise, and whether you consider them prophets or biblical figures or the Son of God, whatever. These names you know, but you don't know the 7th, and it is he who brought people who believed in God from the Shi'a branch of Ismaili Islam into this higher understanding of Tawhid, of unity, of the divine intelligence, of the universal mind. And even beyond those prophets, there are figures throughout history who themselves are emanations of God. One who comes across several times in the Old Testament, Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, one of Muhammad's companion, and the one who is of most relevance to Tawhid and to the Druze understanding of Unitarianism, Al-Hakim. Something else we do know about the Druze faith is that they believe that once a Druze passes away, he or she is immediately reborn in the body of a newborn infant Druze. And when they grow up, when they're but still children, And this sends chills up my spine because I've heard many testimonies of this. They can identify people of their previous life and will come up to an absolute stranger and tell that woman, mother, mother. And reciprocally, people who are told that they are recognized from the previous life will embrace, will bring in that other Druze into their family, into their new life, their new generation. So I want to take you to one other sacred space in the village. This is the outside of also a meditation area that was carved out of stone. Nothing particularly sacred or religious happened historically, but it is a place that people go, and I went to meditate, to be by oneself or with others, sit in silence, and just feel the presence of whatever one feels. This is one of the major sheikhs of the village who actually set the appointment for me to interview him in this sacred space. Just a couple of other major tenets of the Druze. You cannot become Druze, remember? The window of opportunity, it's too late, you missed it by 800 years. And you cannot, if you are a Druze, marry a non-Druze. So nobody can convert to become Druze. And if you marry outside, then you lose the opportunity to pass on your Druze heritage to your children. Another Druze tenet, and this is a religious, an enlightened, excuse me, Druze lawyer who quoted to me the Talmud in the saying that the law of the land is your law. In other words, wherever a Druze lives, he or she must obey the sovereign, the jurisprudence, the legal structure of whatever that country is. So Druze loyalty is to the land that they live in, and which is why I am showing you in the village I lived in, the cemetery, which has dozens and dozens of tombstones, graves for Druze soldiers who have died fighting for Israel, in whose defense forces they are drafted, unlike any other non-Jewish citizen. So at this point, I can pause for questions, because my remaining slides have more to do not with religion but more with the life that I experienced as a researcher in education in the village. So I'll leave it up to the timekeepers to decide.
Bill, you've got more time. If you'd like to continue on, that's just fine.
Okay, then I'll just, if you would like to visit the school, one of the two elementary schools. I think it's important so that you don't get this idea from everything I've shown you that the Druze are an austere people who are isolated and isolating and otherwise hesitant to allow strangers into their midst, into their community. I learned so much just being with the kids of the four schools in the district or in the village itself, learning one of the universal messages that kids are kids, and everything that makes them wonderful, and some of them difficult to deal with in the classroom, depending on their age. And how some of them are really into sports, the kids, the girls, usually better students, more attentive. And, actually sometimes I could use this as sort of the other Druze message. One of the many messages that I received by going to school and starting off in first grade and making it to all the way to 12th grade in 4 months of going to school in the Druze village. I love these twin girls, sisters. This is the gym teacher of the elementary school. 2 Hebrew language teachers of the school, and you can tell that they are religious. An elderly religious man who taught Druze heritage, and 2 of the teachers. Most of the women feel that they need to dress religiously when they're coming to teach in the school. And I'll leave you with this very interesting Druze guy, not the religious one, but the one standing under the 5-colored. You don't see all 5 colors, but the Druze flag, Daniel Fares, with his who actually teaches martial arts, the Israeli martial arts. And on his tattoo, on his forearm, has a tattoo of the yin and the yang, the Druze 5-colored star, and the Jewish Star of David. Oh yes, he's also got one of those on his neck in the rec room that you can see behind. I hope that's clear enough on your screens. So this is my favorite picture from the school. And now I will stop and take pictures, Neil. Take questions.
Well, Bill, thanks very much. If you wouldn't mind, there you go, thanks. So does anybody have any questions? If not, I could start off with a couple, but anybody want to raise their hands? The people whose pictures aren't there, it's going to be tough unless you can do it electronically. All right, Janet Klein.
Can you talk about what your project and research was that took you to the village?
Sure. So can I tell you a secret, which is not a Druze secret? Okay. So the secret, what I'm going to give you as my answer is the pretext for getting a research grant and for going, and then I'll tell you the real reason I went. So the pretext, the research had to do with learning how do the Druze teach the Hebrew language to their children. How do the children absorb the Hebrew language? How does this minority of Druze citizens of Israel come to learn the oral, the written, the literature. How do they become fluent Hebraic citizens of Israel? So that was it. It was a language education, language learning project. And the real reason is because I had the opportunity with my wife, actually, who's in on our Zoom, to briefly visit the village during a 2-week study tour that I had of Israel. And when I spent time in the village, I just was so attracted to it. And the people were so hospitable, and learning just so briefly that there is school in the village and they learn Hebrew in the village. And I just felt compelled to come back and to have a good reason to spend first a good 4 months there, which I did as a clip, 6 weeks with my wife, and maybe you'll have questions for her in the village, and then coming back every year from 2015 until COVID.
If I can jump in, and I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, but I guess I have a question, and then I see there's one, at least with Sam. But my question is, and it sort of follows through, is you keep on talking about this Druze village, and I'm wondering how much interaction do they have, is there outside of this village? What do they, do they, I mean, you've already talked about the men and perhaps even the women fight in the army. I assume since the Israeli women fight in the army, do the Druze women participate in the military as well?
No, only the men.
Okay, that's interesting. So, but all right, so broader context, what kind of interaction is there with the rest of the country in which they're located?
So that's a very important question, and it's something that has been evolving over the last 2 decades, and the educational system deliberately tries to set up. And I actually sat in on one of these visits of Jewish school kids coming to the village for a day, and meeting with their counterparts and getting a kind of tutorial on what the Druze people are and the faith, similar to what I just did. But until the men go into the army, limited interaction outside, until the women, and this is a major change, women now go to university in higher percentage than do Druze men. But it's still a very conservative society, so that it's frowned upon to let a girl sleep outside of the village. And so most of them, the nearest university is University of Haifa. It's almost 2 hours away. And that's what they'll do on a daily basis. And Neil, you thought your schlep by commuter rail to Ruggles was a big deal.
Yeah. Sam, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
No, I see a hand up, the electronic hand.
Why'd you put your hand up?
No. All right. Next, Phil, is that your hand?
Yes, it is.
Go for it.
This may be a repetition of your question, Neil, but maybe not. If you could try to describe, Bill, whether or not the Druze have any political involvement. Do they take a role in running the community in a certain way? And if so, is there any contrast to how they would do that versus the Jewish communities surrounding them? I'm just searching for a way to maybe provide some way of differentiating their beliefs and behavior from other people and other belief systems that surround them.
So in terms of that, the Druze faith, as I provided it, that's their system of beliefs. They know very much about Judaism because they live in a Jewish majority country.
Yeah.
And the curriculum is, although most of the teaching is in the Arabic language, the curriculum is that of the Israeli state. So the Druze know a lot more about Judaism than Jews know about the Druze, the Tawhid. So in a nutshell, I think that's, am I getting at your question?
You are in a way, but I'm wondering if you can comment about whether there is any contrast. Are they of the same cloth with the Jewish people in terms of what they believe in and the way they run their lives? Or is there any contrast in what they do to the Jews? Do you know what I mean by that?
I'm not quite sure. Contrast in terms of what?
What they believe in, what they would defend.
Okay, great. All right. So they are, first of all, remember what everything I'm saying now is about the Druze of Israel. Remember that I said no religion is a country unto itself. So the Druze of Israel are very loyal Israelis.
I see.
They are proud of their contributions to defend the country that they see as theirs, that they share with the majority of Jewish people who live in Israel. And the tension that has arisen in the last 3 years, and if I were giving a political science as opposed to a religious studies like talk, I would emphasize, but there was legislation passed by the Israeli parliament 3 years ago that is seen as denigrating to all non-Jewish citizens of Israel, and that the Druze are taking particularly hard because, and I often use this term, they are Zionists without calling themselves Zionists. And now your question really is of new and very serious import. But that's an issue that they have with the government, and a legal decision and a new law that was passed. It's not a conflict that they have with the Jewish people per se.
I understand. Thank you.
Tony, I saw your hand next if you wanted to ask a question.
Okay, thanks. I have a couple questions. Would the Druze consider themselves an Abrahamic religion, and would the Abrahamic religions consider the Druze an Abrahamic religion? Sort of inside and outside.
Okay, can I take that one first?
Yeah. Oh, that was one question.
Yeah, because it's easy. The answer is yes.
Okay, from both perspectives?
You mean?
Well, would a Muslim, I mean, I know there's controversy about that, but let's assume that Christians, Jews, and Muslims are all derived from Abraham or Ibrahim. They all worship the same God. Would the Druze say that they also do, and would Christians say, or Jews or Muslims say that they also do?
Yes, but so the Jews definitely believing as Unitarians that these three faiths are Abrahamic, and they believe that all believers are united, because if you believe in God, then you are one of the monotheists that they are representing. But it's not reciprocal. It's not reciprocal because on the Muslim part, for centuries, Muslims viewed the Druze as heretics. And even today, many Druze were targeted during the civil war in Syria by ISIS and another Islamist radical group called Al-Nusra. And they were targeted because of this longstanding prejudice against the heretics who left Islam.
Okay.
Now, so that's the extreme, but it's in the background.
Okay.
Now, most Jews, A, know nothing about the Druze religion, and B, assume that they're just another kind of Muslim people. And so don't really appreciate the nuance of the Tawhid, of the radical monotheism that the Druze bring to the religious, the theological discussion.
Okay. And that answered my second question too, about whether or not the Druze were, since they're not a majority in any country, since they're a minority in all the countries they're in, I was going to ask if they're persecuted, and I guess the answer is yes. Then my third question.
So,
Okay.
wait, Tony, there are a couple of other questions. Can we come back to you?
Okay.
I guess Florence, we've figured out it's not Sam, but Florence. Did you want to ask a question? If you do, please unmute yourself.
And Neil?
Yeah.
I also have a question.
Oh, okay.
So you can keep me to last, but,
Okay.
but I do have a question.
All right. Florence, are you there? I see a hand raised, but again, nobody is. All right. Hopefully, don't know. Any case, I overlooked a question that came in earlier, and I think it's probably either from your wife or your daughter. I'm not sure, but it says, is there significance to the 5 colors of the Druze flag?
Hi, Dad.
Hello, Dudus. So yes, there definitely is. In fact, there are different meanings. One of the meanings is the each one represents one of the prophets. And I didn't write it out, but others represent the green. I know represents the importance of land. The red represents the importance of Druze unity, the Druze blood, if you will. Whiteness is the purity of divinity. Which colors did I leave out? And there are 2 others, but so the colors definitely do represent either the different prophets in one way or different aspects and values within the Druze faith.
Okay, another question that came in on the chat is, do Druze have clergy?
Sure. The ones, if the questioner saw the image of the ones with the long white beards, so they are known by the term sheikh, which is also used among Muslims, but Muslims use it, I think, in a more political sense and governance sense. Yes, so that is the clergy, and they're known as sheikhs, but not like the sheikhs of Lawrence of Arabia terminology.
All right, one more question from the chat, and then we can go back to raised hands or whatever. Is Al-Hakim's expected return part of the secret of Druze religion?
Well, the person who must have Googled Al-Hakim and is revealing some of the secrets, yes, he is considered a messianic-like figure within Druze theology. But even if I knew more about it, I wouldn't be allowed to talk about it. And there are mysteries within mysteries, such as the mathematical one that nobody has asked, which is if you can't convert to Druzeism, and if you marry out, you lose. But if you look at population figures, how is it that there are a million Druze in the world today, and 50 years ago there were 800,000 Druze today? I mean, how do you account for the location of all those Druze? But that preempts a question, so I won't say anything more.
All right. Any other hands that people want to raise, or should we go back to Tony? I've got another question I could ask as well, and then Bill said he had a question, I guess, to ask all you folks. By the way, Charles, did that answer your question that you put in the? Charles?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else have a question? I see Tony's hand still up. Oh, we got a Pat. Oh, Pat's son. I'm sorry.
Hi. Are there many Druzes outside the Middle East, in other parts of the world?
Mm-hmm. So I'm so glad you asked that question. You look too young to know who Casey Kasem was. The name Casey Kasem?
Yeah, I know who Casey Kasem is, the disc jockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he also did the voice of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
That's right. Okay. So I'm letting you in on a secret. He is one of the American Druze.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was.
I knew he was Middle Eastern, but I didn't know he was Druze.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So how many American Druze are there?
Yeah.
So I think the last time I looked, there were about 20,000.
Oh,
Wow.
really? Wow.
Or that might be North America.
Yes.
Are they spread out or concentrated in certain areas?
Concentrated in California
Uh-huh.
and in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And they organize annual, what they call conventions or colloques, but really what they are speed dating for young Druze, so that they'll be able to perpetuate the peoplehood, even in the diaspora.
Uh-huh.
And there are a lot of Druze in Latin America.
Oh, no kidding.
Even before they, in the middle to late 19th century, there was a lot of emigration, not just of Druze, but in general from Lebanon and Syria. Economic conditions were really bad, and migration possibilities were big. And
Mhm.
Latin America was a big draw.
Oh, no kidding.
So in addition to Latin America, North America, the other non-Middle Eastern center is Australia.
Australia, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
And there are Druze associations in all of these countries, and they have those same kinds of annual, you want to meet a nice Druze girl, go to the convention.
But I mean, do the Druzes, are the Druzes grew out of Islam originally. Are there Druzes in far-flung places as, say, Chinese Turkestan or Kazakhstan or any places like that?
So you know, you don't realize it, but you just asked a very deep theological question among the
Yeah.
Druze, because there aren't people in China or Tajikistan or Kazakhstan who call themselves Druze,
Mhm.
but the Druze believe that Druze are everywhere. They
Ah.
cite China as one of the places that you would not know that there are Druze, but there are Druze souls. So,
Ah.
so one of the mysterious aspects of this aspect of Tawhid is that you might be Druze without knowing it.
How about that?
Is that because of the souls entering the body of a child being born, and it could be anywhere, or is it always? Well, let me just stop there.
I think those are parallel mysteries,
Okay.
because I've learned about those in different contexts. So I don't think that but maybe, you know, maybe Amy, you just had an insight into the Druze faith that escapes most of us non-Druze.
All right, if I can jump in one more for a question, and then I'll get it back to Tony. You know, I can't shed the fact that I'm an economist, Bill. So I want to ask you a question. How do they interact with the Israeli economy? What do they do to survive? What kinds of I mean, you had a picture of somebody who was a Druze lawyer. Now, is he a lawyer to non-Druze, or is he a lawyer just to Druze? How do they interact economically? What do they do? I guess that's as far as my question goes. I think you got the idea.
I did. So I'll answer. I'll go start from the general and then go back to my lawyer friend, because he's a very close friend, actually. So the Druze economy underwent a major transformation from about the 1970s up until today. The transformation was from going from being an agricultural society, cash cropping mostly to a large extent for tobacco and olives. They've entered a service economy mode of life, and they can't compete economically with the kibbutzim and other agro-industrial complexes in Israel. And again, I mean, right now I'm answering from the perspective of Israeli Druze.
Right.
Okay. So what do they do if they're not agriculturalists? Well, they something like 40% of the Druze men are in the security sector of Israel, the various security sectors, army, police, and border patrol. That's what they do, and they continue in some security capacities even after they've left the formal army. So yeah, and it's a good, and they become officers. You have high-ranking officers. The chief medical officer for all of the Israeli Defense Forces is from my village. I'm very proud, from the Druze village. And the women, I'm not sure if I said this before. Yes, I did. Are professionals because they go to university. Most of them become teachers. And a lot more and more they're not going into the army, but they do voluntary national service after they've gone to high school. In terms of my friend Talia, the lawyer, the Orthodox lawyer, his office is not in the village. His office is in the neighboring Jewish town, and his clients are, for the most part, non-Jewish, non-Druze. A combination of Muslim Arabs, Christian Arabs. He has Jewish clients. And I'll just tell you this one anecdote. When I went to the office, if you know what a mezuzah is on the doorpost, you have parchment writing from the Torah in it. It's a good luck charm. You're supposed to have it. And he had this enormous mezuzah on the doorpost of his office. Now, this is a Jewish thing. It's not a Druze thing. And so I asked him about it. And he says, well, for one thing, you know, we accept all faiths. We accept all religions. We accept the sacred writings of the Jewish people. So why not have a mezuzah? And he said, and also, you know, it's not bad for business.
Right, Tony, since I don't see anybody else right at the moment, let's go back. You said you had a third question. Maybe you've got more.
Gail just raised her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gail? Unmute yourself, Gail.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself, Gail.
Okay. What would the Druze think of our Unitarian religion? I mean, you said they accept all religions, but would they feel closer to our Unitarian Universalism?
Wow. Wow. You know, Gail, I just had a vision. I just had a vision of flipping the talk I gave this evening and giving the similar talk about Unitarian Universalism in the Druze village. And them also saying, wow, there are other people who actually also believe in Unitarianism, in Tawhid. So they don't know anything about guide. And they'd be intrigued. I think they'd be intrigued.
Yeah, and then we can be pen pals, Bill.
But it sounds very opposite, really. They're not accepting anyone to join their religion. We're open
Right.
to anybody.
So you actually put your finger on one of the biggest paradoxes that exists. And the way that I understand that paradox, its evolution and its resolution, is that at the beginning, they were Unitarian the way that you are Unitarian. That is, here is the understanding of how we should live as humans and live together as humans, universally, because we are all connected, and we are all connected because we have a divine spark in us, or we share in the universal mind, however you want to put it. But because at that time and place, that belief was heresy, they were persecuted by the Muslims who surrounded them, and they were forced, for survival's sake and survival of the faith, to move inward and to become a close-knit, even secretive community, in complete contrast, as you've noted, to what the essence of their teaching was. And so they were victims of their own theology, which created over time this kind of separation and isolationism. But you know, one of the books that I showed you on the screen was written by, and this goes back to the Casey Kasem example that I gave, a Lebanese Druze who migrated to the United States, became a very successful physician, just retired in Syracuse, and wrote this book has nothing to do with medicine. But he, living in the United States and seeing how Druze can thrive in an open society, can and should share their faith, their vision, their Tawhid, and allow others to join, to accept, because they no longer are being persecuted in the world at large the way that they had been.
Thank you.
Which,
All right.
which, and Neil, well, you let me know when it's time for my question, because
Well, Tony's been very patient, so we should probably give him the opportunity to ask his third question.
yes.
No, I've had all my questions answered from other questions. I really want to hear Bill's question. I think I know what it is.
Yeah, Tony knows it, and Gail sort of brought me back to it when she asked what would the Druze think of you guys, of Unitarians. So I'm going back to my question of, look, my understanding is that Unitarian and Unitarian Universalism emerged from an interpretation of Christianity that Christians held that was at variance with the majority thinking at the time, and either they left or were forced to leave the communities, the mainstream Christian communities, so that they could develop first Unitarian, and I know Universalism took a different parallel stance. But so my question is, recognizing that historically you emerged out of Protestant Christianity, what is your relationship and your identity vis-a-vis Christianity?
And you're probably get however many of us there are on this call, that many answers. Who
Well,
wants-
I want to hear as many answers as there are.
So Tony, you want to start with your answer?
Okay. We did evolve from Christianity, but we are not any longer a denomination. We're a separate religion, a recognized separate religion. As far as who there's just a vast variety of personal beliefs, I would say, within the congregation. A large percentage considers themselves atheists or agnostic. We have blended families, Jews and Christians mostly. Probably most everybody else just has a personal belief. Probably some people that I should say before I say that lean toward Christianity or might consider themselves Christians, but the religion as a whole is no longer a Christian denomination. I'm not sure from when, probably from when they merged. Anybody else want to take that?
Well, I do know, and I'm not an expert by any means here, Bill. I do know of it, certainly one Unitarian Universalist church in this area, Weston, that still has a cross in it at the front of the sanctuary. So I believe there still are some Unitarian Universalist churches that still align relatively closely with Protestantism.
Yeah, I should have said when I was given those statistics, sort of that's First Parish here in Needham. Other churches may have their own cuts of that.
So in answering the question, I guess part of it is the Jesus question.
Right.
Whether you however you conceive of Jesus, is Jesus recognized within Unitarian Universalism?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Gail.
Yes,
Oh,
but go ahead, Gail.
yes, but go ahead, Janet.
Yes, but I would say Unitarian Universalists recognize Jesus as a prophet, an important prophet, and someone to learn from, but not as in a more Christian denomination, they would say Son of God. But
And one of many prophets and humans that we look to as models of behavior. Yeah.
But there are people who call themselves a Christian Unitarian. And there is a church downtown, I can't remember the name of it, that serves communion, which of course, that would be another decisive factor. It's the oldest one that used to be the Episcopal Church. Anyway.
King's Chapel, I think.
Thank you, King's Chapel. I'm not sure if it's just once a year or if it's on a regular basis.
I would also say that at one time, I don't know if it still is, that the minister of the Newton Church was considered himself a Buddhist. So
Right.
we're all over the place. I mean, my take on the Jesus question would be that we recognize him as an important individual, but not a divine person, a regular human.
All right, Jonathan,
I
his
just-
hand I saw was up, and maybe we should give him the
I've done it.
last question or comment.
Oh, I consider myself for the most part a Buddhist with some Native American spiritual leanings.
All right, anybody else want to comment? Well, if not, I think it's probably about time for us to thank Bill,
Yes.
as best we can. There is under, if you have your device, you could go to the reactions and put up a wave or a thumbs up or something like that, see? Used to be one that said clap or something. I don't see that one. I guess maybe that's what that one is. Any case, Bill, thank you very much for coming.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Bill.
you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
It's very good.
Good job, Dad.
And
Thank
everybody
you.
else, everybody
And
else, thank you for attending, and hopefully we'll see you, everybody, in 2 weeks. And Bill, if you can hang on for a second, I'd like to chat just for a minute.
Sure.
All right.
And thank you all.
Okay.
And thank you
Okay.
for revealing a secret that I wanted to know.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Amy, don't shut it down quite yet.
I won't.
Thank you.
Amy,
All
you can
All right.
transfer the host to Neil, and then
Well, that's all right. No, that's all right. I wanted to see who was behind that other name. I'm glad to finally see. I gather that's your daughter and a boyfriend or a male friend anyway.
Oh, he's my spouse.
You're
and
Sorry.
a friend.
He's also my son-in-law.
There you go.
And our baby's asleep in the other room.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, thank you very much. It was really great. I think lots of people enjoyed it, and I really appreciated you doing that as a friend and a former colleague.
Well, and it was nice that we were able to record it, because I do think that people wanted to come, and there was such a snafu with the Zoom link, and so we'll have it available now for people. But it was very interesting. It opened my mind to a whole new area. So it was great.
Amy, when we get the link, we'll have to forward it to Bill. So why don't you, when you get the
Yeah.
link, I don't know what happens to it. Forward it to me, send it to me, and then I can forward it off.
Okay. Well, we're going to use the same link for, you mean for the video?
Yeah, for the video.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, when that happens, I'll send it to you, Neil.
Okay.
Bill, would you be interested in attending the next two sessions we have, the one on the Baha'i faith and the one on Islam? Like we can send you the pointer to that. It's just this. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I mean, we're sending it to you. There's no obligation on your part.
I know for certain that Bill has actually visited our church. He was up here many years ago. How long ago was that, Bill?
Oh, boy, I remember.
For a coffee house concert.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well,
Okay.
again, Bill,
Thanks.
thanks very much. I really
Thanks again.
Yes, it was great. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good
Bye,
night.
everyone.